Hello and welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. I'm Helen Murray, and usually Rob would be here, but he's actually away on holiday. But we are brought to you every week by oxygenaddict.com and raceforce.co.uk. So yeah, this week's a little bit different because Rob's not here. I think he might be stalking Javier Gomez, or trying to at least. He says he's training, but I don't know whether to believe that or not. He's out in Fuerteventura on a training camp with Oxygen Addict. So he's not here. Therefore, a little bit of a different show because we've had to record it earlier. So don't have any race results for you. One thing I do have though, a little bit of news with raceforce.co.uk, and don't forget, as a Cup of Tri listener, you receive 10% off all race tours, training weekends and bike transport services, excluding the bike bus standard. So the one thing that I noticed in my inbox this week, which I thought might be of interest, is about Team Lucy. So Lucy Gossage, who's been on the show before, if you want to go back and listen to it, just go on to oxygenaddicts.com/podcast and scroll down and you'll find it there. And if you don't remember from the interview, Lucy is actually a cancer doctor. She's an incredible athlete as well, but her profession, when she's not being an awesome athlete, is as a cancer doctor. So she's going to be raising money for the Teenage Cancer Trust. And this is at Staffordshire 70.3, and she's putting together a fundraising team. So essentially, if you want to get involved, you have to raise a minimum of £2,000 and you have to pay £150 to be a member of the team. However, what you get back is absolutely brilliant. So as well as knowing that obviously you're raising loads of money for a really, really worthwhile cause, you will get entry to the sold out Ironman 70.3 Staffordshire. You'll get an 18-week training plan, which is written by Lucy. You'll get some exclusive training days with Lucy. You get accommodation in a hotel the night before the race, drinks for afterwards for you and your family, entry to the Silverstone Half Marathon. And then this bit's really good. You get a bike service and pre-race check provided by Bridgetown Cycles, and a bike fit provided by bikefit.co.uk, who are also based out of Bridgetown Cycles. And these are the ones who used to do lots of bike fits for Tom Lowe. They sponsor Catherine Foe. They've done a bike fit on Chrissy Wellington. They're really, really good. Know their stuff. So that's a fantastic deal there. And you also get all your training kit, so tri-suit, sunglasses, nutrition, goggles, discount on wetsuits, laces, so loads and loads of goodies. So if you do want to get involved, check out Bridgetown Cycles or check out Lucy Gossage and help raise money for the Teenage Cancer Trust. Okay, so let's move on to our interview of the week. And you could say it's a little bit different this week, and that's because it is to do with winter triathlon. So I won't say any more, and I will pass over to our interview of the week with Kerry McGawley. Kerry McGawley, welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. It's been a busy morning, but yeah, I'm fine.
Now, the reason I wanted to get you on was because you tweeted us with some photos of you outside, very much in the snow. Cross-country skis were involved, a bike was involved, and then just this absolutely stunning landscape. And I was like, we've got to get you on. So tell me, what were you training for?
Yeah, that was Saturday morning actually, and it was a nice, easy session. I think in the tweet I wrote that I don't usually have my headphones on when I'm training. And I don't do that at all, but on this occasion I felt like some company out in the tracks, so I had the podcast on, so that made me think to tweet. But yeah, I'm currently training for the Winter Triathlon World Championships out in Austria later this month.
And so what does a winter triathlon involve then?
You typically, there's some different variations, but the kind of main traditional ITU variant is that you start with running, and it's all on sort of snow. So it's usually on hard packed or ski tracks or trails in the mountains. And then you go on to mountain bike, and then you finish up with cross country skiing. And you typically use the skate, the freestyle technique.
Yep.
So there's no swimming. Yippee!
I did see a video the other day that Slow Twitch had put up of some Finnish people swimming in the snow, if that's at all possible.
Yeah, there's some good YouTube clips of crazy people diving into sort of frozen lakes and stuff.
That's it. So how far is like the run and the bike and the cross country ski?
The ITU, they have a sort of European series. I don't know if they have anything more worldwide, but they have a European series, and then they have this World Championships race. And their races are typically, it's not fixed as it is in summer triathlon, but the race later in February in the World Champs race, and this is quite typical. It's a 7.2 kilometre run, it's a 12k mountain bike, and it's a 9.6k ski. But they can vary a bit, so sort of 6 to 8 k's of running usually, 10 to 15 k's of mountain biking, and then typically kind of 8 to 10 k's of cross country skiing.
Wow. And which do you have a preferred one of the three?
I'm not a skier by background, but I'm actually fairly okay at that. For some reason, I'm awful on a mountain bike technically.
So I guess the snow doesn't really help.
No, and running's safest. So I would say in this discipline, I'm probably relatively stronger in the running. But like I say, like my endurance is good. I'm finishing up with a ski at the end, and there's not that many people who come from skiing who do this sport. So I mean, I tend not to suffer too badly. But yeah, so I would say the running is most naturally easiest for me, and for some reason the mountain biking's the trickiest.
And what's it like having to prepare the body to go from one to the other? Because obviously swim, bike, run, and then run, bike, cross country ski, different kettle of fish.
Yeah, it's really hard with the run, I would say, because you're so used to, as a triathlete, running everything you've got left in the tank, running out to the line. And it's really hard to control that. And I'm a sort of front kind of runner anyway, so I find it really hard to sort of, tone it down during the run and not completely smash myself. But luckily, I think it's actually a bit of a bonus in some ways that I'm technically poor on the bike, because I can't actually physically go much faster, so I tend to recover a bit then. And then smash it on the skis, just everything you got left then. So yeah, it's okay. I would say the trickiest part is balancing the run, not to be an all-out effort. And
how on earth did you get into it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've always had this real kind of passion for cross-country skiing. Like I said, I'm not a cross-country skier by background, and I learnt to ski. I was living in Bath, and it was about, I don't know, 2010-ish, 2009. And I just booked a trip it was the Alps actually, and just learnt to cross-country ski. And then I sort of dragged back some of my triathlon friends from Bath and took them out to Andorra or to the Pyrenees, and we did some more cross-country skiing then. And then after my PhD, I needed to just blow out for a few months, not be staring at a computer screen. So I moved to Austria to a really sort of well-known cross-country ski resort, in that it's at a plateau, and they've also got a glacier up there with a plateau. So lots of national teams go out there for autumn kind of training camps on the glacier. And I just really got into it there, and that's where I got into winter triathlon as well. So that was 2000 end of 2010, beginning of 2011, that kind of time. So I just happened to be living there. And then going forward from there, I got a postdoc up here in Sweden, which is quite far. Well, I mean, everyone thinks of Stockholm. We're a lot further north than Stockholm, so we have a lot of snow up here. So there's a lot of skiing, and most of the national team are based here from the cross-country ski, the Swedish team as well. So yeah, so there's just lots of skiing. So it's kind of just an environmental thing, and I love the snow, and I love endurance sports. So I love cross-country skiing. It's tough.
Do you ever do standalone cross-country ski races, or do you actually like the multi-sport element of it?
Yeah, I do standalone cross-country ski races. I train for summer triathlon. That's my main sport and main focus, I would say. But a lot of the year here, there's so much snow that you need to get out in the snow. And there's very little winter triathlon. It's not big in Scandinavia, and it's not really big in the world at all. So there's not that many races. So I tend to do, there's two different types of cross-country skiing. There's classic, where you kind of go in the tracks back and forwards, more like a running kind of stride. And then there's skate, which looks more like ice skating, where the skis go out in a kind of V shape. And that's more my cup of tea, and that's what they use in winter triathlon typically as well. So yeah, I tend to do maybe 2 or 3 standalone cross-country ski races. I mean, I'm surrounded, like I said, by the national team, so it's really hard to just rock up and look sort of respectable. So I kind of, so I'm actually going out to Switzerland in March to do a big kind of, what would you call it, recreational type. I mean, it's an elite race as well, but it's like they have quite a lot of these kind of marathon races, you know, like Vasaloppet.
Yep, and so you're doing the Engadin?
Engadin ski marathon. Good knowledge.
I did it in 2011.
Oh, you did? Oh, great. How was it? Tell me more about it.
It's amazing. I had been on snow perhaps twice. It took me, so the winners do it in what, an hour and a half or something?
Yeah, I've heard it's a bit downhill.
They have one section which they call Mattress Hill, which is a bit like a blue ski run. Or maybe for a beginner it's fine, it'll be like a green ski run, but essentially by the time I got there, because I genuinely was so bad, it was completely and utterly chopped up. So yeah, just look out for that bit, and that's where they have the cameras and everyone like gathering around just waiting for people to sort of fall over. But no, absolutely incredible event, amazing atmosphere, and I think it took me 4.5 hours.
Okay. Wow. Well, I thought obviously it was good because I did my first sort of ski marathon up here in my local town, which was a classic race, and something I remember posting afterwards. I thought I was the only person in the universe that actually skied slower than they've run a marathon, but now I've got a mate.
That is exactly it. It is so much slower than how I could run, which is quite shameful, really. If you would speak to, I guess, the pro skiers, pro cross-country skiers, they'd just be like, what the heck? Yeah. So what's the level of competition like then in the winter triathlon? And where is it popular?
It's a really small sport on the whole, and it's most popular, or the best athletes are typically Russian, Czech, and there's a few Norwegians as well. It's not very big at all in Sweden. There's a few sort of decent triathletes that come from places where there's snow, so they've kind of got into it that way, or people that have grown up with kind of skiing and then have gone into triathlon. There's a real kind of pioneer for the sport, a Norwegian guy who's sponsored quite a lot of events and has tried to kind of fund some of the real top athletes out there. So they had a kind of handful of people previously. But yeah, it's not big. The European series tends to be held all in Central Europe, so none of the races get really up to Scandinavia. So it's bigger, Italy, Austria, Switzerland, those kind of central areas, and then even Eastern Estonia, and like I say, Russia and Czech. So I'd say it's definitely more participants coming from Central Europe and Eastern Europe than up from Scandinavia.
Are they hoping to get it into the Olympics one day, maybe?
I'm not too sure. Yeah, I've talked to some of the guys from the ITU that kind of try to champion the sport and have really worked really hard to kind of move it forward. There's an English guy who's quite involved via the ITU that was a race referee. We had the European champs up here the year that I moved here, so I met him and had a chat to him. Actually, Sarah, Sarah Springman, the ex
ITU
president, of British Triathlon as well. She came up here to do the European champs, and I got chatting to her as well. So she was living in Switzerland at the time, so she was kind of into it as well. And yeah, they have worked hard. I think the difficulty is kind of not knowing if they fit into the Federation of Skiing, cross-country skiing, or the Federation of Triathlon. And it's come from a sort of triathlon area, but there's so few people who can and do cross-country ski that it's quite tough. But there are athletes who are really kind of keen on it and people that want to move it forward. But I think it's been a bit of a slow process. So I'm not sure of the way it will go in the future.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? You don't know, because if they've brought in things like, I don't know, slope style and freestyle into the actual Winter Olympics, then it might be a route that they potentially want to go down in the future. Do you, when you actually rock up at the events, what's it like compared to? I mean, I've seen that you did the World Long Distance Championships last season in Sweden. So can you compare what are the two like when you turn up to a winter triathlon and when you turn up to a normal sort of summer triathlon?
Yeah, totally different. There's no water, there's a load of snow, it's a lot colder. No, but I mean, it's the numbers involved. I mean, the long distance champs at Multala last year in Sweden, I mean, it was huge and there was tons of publicity and it was a really big event for that town and for Sweden itself as well. And it's just, summer triathlons are obviously much more in the public eye. There's lots of kind of pro athletes who make a living from this. Winter triathlon hasn't really got that kind of background because there's not the same kind of money, even though triathlon generally hasn't got much money in it. Winter triathlon's got even less, if you can believe that. So I mean, it's much smaller scale, and it's newer. And I think it's kind of nice. It's still got that rawness about it, and people can, like you say, rock up in. I mean, there's all kinds of colours and kits and stuff. I mean, you rock up to any transition zone now, and it's just insane. I love looking at a transition zone and just guessing the value of that, like square 400 meters.
It's mad, isn't it?
Oh, it's crazy. And I mean, the disc wheels and the deep wheels and this and that and then the people aren't necessarily matching it in the sort of level of athlete. These guys are typically, I mean, you've got hardcore athletes here who are just raw tough nuts, but with no sort of kit and no fancy stuff.
Yep.
There is some of that sort of fancy stuff, but mountain biking, that sort of background of mountain biking and even multi-sport, adventure racing, that kind of stuff, it is less about the kit and it's more about the rawness of how tough you're going to be out there. And I mean, it's been some of the stuff that I've been mentioning a bit. I've been getting on my bandwagon about all this indoor training stuff, and I'm an exercise physiologist, so I'm all about improving performance. So I've got no beef with it at all. But I mean, yeah, it was interesting listening to. Was it Lionel's?
Lionel Sanders, who hadn't done any training outside.
Yeah, and I was horrified. I thought, you poor guy, like, get out there. It's amazing. And the same with Daniela Rief. I mean, living in St. Moritz on the Alps, God, the last thing I'd want to do is be inside. So I mean, these kind of guys are just used to being outdoors and cold, and yeah, minus 20 degrees is normal.
I was going to say, it's a good job that you don't have the swimming, having to get out in minus 20. That would be quite horrendous. What's transition like, going from one to the other? So a normal setup, you're in a panic trying to get your wetsuit off, and then trying to switch from your trainers, whatever. Here you've got blooming cross-country skis to get on.
Yeah, actually, I would say the transition looks really similar. That's probably the part of the race that is most similar. So the transition zone is typically got sort of dugout. I don't know how you say it. Sort of dugout dips, kind of in the snow, where the front wheel of the mountain bike can be put into, so that the mountain bikes will all stand up.
Yep.
Sometimes they'll use a racking system, but this is a really nice system where, it's just dugout snow that your bike stands into. So you've got your bike there. Winter mountain bike shoes typically aren't on the pedals. That's just too much, too difficult.
Yep.
So they're off the bike. You've got your nutrition as well in there, depending on the length of the run, the length of the race. And then the skis are just sort of like long ways with the poles next to them, next to the bike as well. So I mean, all you've got is that extra thing lying down long ways next to the bike. You've got no sort of towels. You've got your helmet. Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I'm somebody that doesn't really suffer from the cold too much, so I can get away without extra clothing as well. I mean, some people need extra stuff on the bike.
Yeah.
Because you can get quite. That's the thing with starting with the run. You're not as wet as if you'd been. Yeah, I mean, you're not as wet as if you'd been swimming, obviously, but you do get sweatier running, don't you?
Mm.
And you get warm, and then you can get quite cold on the bike, depending on. I mean, some of these places in Central Europe, they can be plus 5 degrees or plus 10. They can be really hot.
Yeah.
Up here in Scandinavia, it can be really, really cold. But no, transition is quite similar, I would say.
Wow. And do you generally, if someone said, right, would you prefer to do a summer triathlon, like I'd say a normal triathlon, or would you prefer to do a winter triathlon? Which do you prefer?
Oh, that's tough. That's the tea or coffee question. No. Although I'm not allowed to say maybe coffee on this podcast. I think I'm passionate about summer triathlon.
Yeah.
I love swim, bike, run, but cross country skiing, it it's equal with the other three components for me now in terms of. I mean, I don't do any cross country skiing through the summer. So the guys up here obviously roller ski all through the summer, but I don't do any of that. So yeah, I can live without the skiing, I guess, more easily. But I don't know. I wouldn't want to give up one. If I had to choose, if you're forcing me, I guess I'd say summer. But I think that's just because the scene doesn't exist on winter triathlon. Like there isn't the possibility to do that many races as there are in summer triathlon.
Do you have to qualify for the World Championships, which you've got coming up later this month?
No, you don't. You have to sort of write them an email and tell them that you're not going to make a complete fool of yourself and of the British Triathlon Federation. So you have to sort of provide some evidence that you can, I think, stand up on skis in some way.
So my 4.5 hour Engadin could get me there.
I think you might be all right. I think give him a call. Yeah, but like I said, because it is such a small sport, I think that they're quite pleased to get people involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at the moment in Sweden, obviously you've got a load of snow around you. What are you actually doing? It's fascinating, like job-wise, when you're not training.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I've got a really busy job and a really busy training schedule, so I haven't got much besides those two things. But yeah, I work at the university as a lecturer and researcher in sports science and exercise physiology.
Yep.
So I basically do this actually when I work. So what am I talking about? I do the same kind of thing. I've just signed myself up as a participant for one of my studies, so that allows me to actually do training when I'm at work officially.
That's very cool. And what are you actually doing research into?
At the moment, I've got 2 studies going on with various kind of students that I'm supervising. I typically look at training interventions of endurance athletes and different methods for, I don't like to use the word optimized training, but I guess that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to see what goes on when you train and how to get maybe larger physiological effects from adapting certain things. But I'm also interested in kind of nutritional interventions and performance. So the 2 studies I've got at the moment are both with nitrate or beetroot juice.
Okay.
So one study is quite nice. It's simple. It's using runners, and we're supplementing them with either beetroot juice plus caffeine, or only beetroot juice, or only caffeine, or purely placebo. And it's a double-blinded study, so they don't know what they get.
Yeah.
And because you can take the nitrate out of beetroot juice and use that as a placebo that you can buy commercially, or you can buy. You can buy for research purposes. I don't think anyone would buy placebo beetroot juice for any other reason.
And what are you finding?
Well, this has only just started, so we're just in the testing phase. I've been in the lab this morning working on that. So we're looking at the effect of those 4 interventions. So we're looking really at the combined effect of beetroot juice and caffeine on 1 kilometre time trial running performance. Okay. So sort of 3 to 4 minute time trial efforts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got no data to tell you about at the moment, but watch this space, watch PubMed.
Okay.
And then another study, we're getting our first participants in tomorrow. That's an altitude study with cross-country skiers and beetroot juice, because the effects of beetroot juice seem to be, appear to be kind of enhanced at high altitude where the oxygen concentration is lower in the air.
So we've heard lots about beetroot juice. I mean, generally you kind of flick through triathlon magazines or whatever, and it says, you should drink the stuff. I know you haven't done these particular studies yet, but you must know a little bit about it. Do you take beetroot juice?
Yeah, these are my first studies actually with beetroot juice, and I was pretty sceptical beforehand, and I'm sceptical about most things. It's always hard in the literature because most of the studies, at least in the beginning, get done with very untrained people or perhaps moderately active people, and even now there aren't that many studies and there isn't that much good evidence for highly trained individuals with beetroot juice. And then the other thing is that the trials are always quite specific to whatever was done in that particular study. So our data is really only going to be useful for anybody doing 1K time trial running there or thereabouts, so maybe 800 metre to 1500 metre runners. But then people extrapolate crazily, don't they?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you need 2 litres of beetroot juice before you're going to go and do an Ironman. And no one ever said that. Yeah, but I do use it. I test it in my own sort of training, in my controlled environments, to see if there's an effect. And last season was the first season that I did start to use it. And it's always hard though with things in practice, because you change so many variables. I was much fitter last year. I'd had a crash a few years ago, and kind of last year was the first year back that everything kind of clicked into place. But suddenly it looks like beetroot juice is magic. Maybe it was to do with the combined 2 or 3 years of decent training. But yeah, for those people that need kind of very, very small, these marginal gains that we're talking about, I don't see any. There's more or less no negatives of using it if you know how much to take and when to take it and how to take it. But it is, again, like with any nutritional kind of intervention, you can get a bit of a looser tummy from it. So I mean, you just need to try it beforehand. And I mean, that's the other thing, like combining. That's what's interesting about this study with combined caffeine and beetroot juice, because there's tons of studies, that have isolated different interventions in different nutritional supplements. But there's very few studies that have put them together. And I mean, by the time you've told people that 5 different things are great and they're chucking them all down their body, sodium bicarb and caffeine and beetroot juice and everything's gone in, I mean, you've got no idea what effect you're left with.
It's really, really interesting. And have you found, because you've been doing research on cross-country skiers, haven't you, in particular, up in Sweden, how do they compare to, say, triathletes and endurance triathletes in particular? Is there a lot of similar physiology between the two?
Yeah, I think the raw physiology isn't that much difference. I mean, they're top end sort of endurance athletes, and it's been one of those, like in the textbooks, if you read sports science, you kind of always see the graph with the cross country skiers with the highest VO2 max values and the highest kind of aerobic fitness and endurance. The reason for that is, I mean, it's one of the only sports that employs that much muscle mass during the activity. So with combined arms and legs working maximally, it gives you huge kind of numbers. The difference that I notice in this country, I'd be interested I've spent a bit of time in Norway, but not a great deal, but it's one of those sports that's highly traditional, and at the moment it's lacking quite a lot of scientific basis to training, to nutrition, to not necessarily physio. Physio is quite good, I would say, and strength and conditioning is reasonably well advanced out here, but definitely nutrition. It's a bit historical. Sweden has the Swedish Olympic Committee. I'm not sure if it's still in place now, but definitely up until at least London and probably Sochi as well, they've never allowed nutritional supplements. Sorry, I talk a lot of Swedish, so I haven't got the right words in English.
I had the same problem when I lived in Mexico. It's really weird, and you're trying to struggle to find the word, and you want to say it in Spanish, and then you're thinking, oh no, that person's not going to understand. So I totally understand.
Yeah.
But don't tell me in Swedish, because I won't understand.
No. Yeah, so they basically didn't allow any of their elite athletes to use nutritional supplements at all.
Wow.
So that causes a lot of problems, actually, because the athletes will do that, but they'll do it, underground, undercover, and then they don't really know what they're doing. So the education around nutritional supplementation here is very poor, and they don't. It makes it actually hard for us to recruit subjects as well, because there's kind of this taboo around it. And it's kind of, I'm talking to the elite skiers now, and we're doing a beetroot juice study at high altitude. Oh, do I have to take the beetroot juice? Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm not sure my coach is going to like that, because they kind of, there is this fine line between banned substances and also contamination. So yeah.
That's fascinating. So what kind of nutritional supplements might, I don't know, British athletes take, which are absolutely fine, nothing dodgy about them at all, but that Swedish ones might not, because, as you say, historically they just haven't? I mean, are you talking things like beetroot juice or what else? Yeah,
I mean, the key ones that we know that work for different types of athletes, I would say the three kind of key ones, or I mean the group of ones would be buffers, so sodium bicarb, beta-alanine, that kind of stuff. Caffeine, because caffeine was banned by WADA until I think it was 2004. So that's another kind of historical thing, whereas or a historical reason for someone like the Swedish Federation and many other federations could have the same take on it, that, you know, it's previously been banned and then all of a sudden it's not, and how come it's suddenly fine to take it? But it is. So I mean, make the most of it. So yeah, I would say it is typically buffers and caffeine and beetroot juice. And there's other kind of other things that maybe have like not so clear cut results that we're not too sure about. But I would just in general say that they don't do the work with it. I mean, they'll use vitamin and mineral kind of things. That's not considered an issue here. But I would say, yeah, it's the key. Creatine is another one. So like those type of key supplements that we know that really in certain situations they do seem to work pretty well, and they're just kind of overlooking that. And I would also say it's not only about nutrition either. In cross-country skiing, kind of training principles, and I really like listening to triathletes and also this podcast and other kind of training science type podcasts, because there's so much information out there and so much clever things that are simple but clever things that coaches are doing. And I would say for me, cross-country skiing is quite stuck in the old days, and it's pretty tough to change the mindsets of the coaches and the athletes. That said, you know, you talk to people in Britain who are working with athletics, for example, and it's a similar situation. I think triathlon's quite nice because it's a new sport, so there's lots of new people who are, and for some reason, I don't know, really seem to be interested in using science in a good way to impact performance. So I think triathlon's a good model for kind of a modern sport, using modern technologies and modern ways of doing things, because there isn't that long tradition of doing things.
And perhaps even someone like Sir Dave Brailsford in cycling has also done that with cycling. Like the marginal gains that he introduced, in a way, has sort of helped other sports, I'd suggest, look at themselves and go, right, well, what can we do better? It's absolutely, it's really, really interesting. Kerry, so then away from your work, how does your triathlon season pan out this year then?
I've got a bit of a plan. I've got the winter triathlon, as I said, later on this month in February. Then I'll do a couple of ski races, kind of March, April time. Training camp end of April, just with my guys out here. Lots of biking. I don't sit on the turbo at all. I might start doing that soon. I did buy one. So, I've got one of these be cool ones, but I can't figure it all out. It's too complicated. It's so much easier.
It's the technical problems, isn't it? I'm not alone.
Yeah. I get it out. I do traditionally get it out once a year. I sit in front of Vasaloppet, you know, the ski marathon out here, and I do Vasa training, Vasa turbo. So I just watch the whole race, which takes about 4 hours, and do my one turbo of the year.
You need to watch some Olympic repeats or something when they're actually doing the sprint cross country, because then that'll make you really push hard for like 20 seconds or something. Do little blasts, and it might make it, rather than 4 hours of, oh goodness.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's the best session of my week. But yeah, no. Back to the races. I'll do. So the winter, a few ski races, and then the first event I've signed up for is the British Champs of middle distance is my distance. I don't feel that I've got time to train for Ironman, and that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
I think that's a good excuse.
Yeah, I don't want to get involved. It's too far. So the British Champ, which is Grafman. How do you say it? Grafman?
So yep, Grafman.
Yeah, so I need to figure that out. My sister's rudely getting married that same day. So that's still to be confirmed.
I had that problem. My brother's getting married. I had entered the Chester Triathlon, then my brother's getting married. So then I entered one the week before, which is Bala. And then it might be that I don't know. I might have to be involved in Wedmin again that weekend. So who
No,
knows?
Valor's great. Have you done Valor before?
Yeah, a couple of years ago. So
Yeah, I qualified for, what did I qualify about? Something. I did it and it was awesome. It was totally freezing. It was pouring with rain. I did really, really well because all the girls who were really fast, they just broke.
hypothermia.
Yeah, they broke, they froze. And yeah, I'm kind of about 63. I'm heavier basically than, I'm about 63 kilos or something. And yeah, for a triathlete anyway, I'm heavier than these really little ones who they got really cold and struggled. So I just remember that and I loved it.
Well, if you do have to change because of weddings, it is the 5th, 6th of June weekend.
Okay, yeah, good to write down. Because the other one I've entered the Norwegian half Iron at 70.3. So that's
fantastic.
Haugesund. Yeah, I don't know much about it actually. I'm going to see if I can try and get down there and recce the course a little bit. I've got no real idea even if it's kind of flat or hilly. I don't think it's too brutal.
No, it looks absolutely stunning. I will find some brains to pick for you for that one.
Yeah,
Find out.
I mean, it's an awesome spot when you look at where it is on the map. So it should be really nice. And I did Rapperswil last year, and I did really well, and I loved it. And that's hillier. That like we're pretty flat out here, so I was pretty surprised at how I managed in the Alps there, or in the hilly parts.
It's all the cross country skiing. Seriously,
So
cross country skiing really is. I think it is one of the best activities out there because it works you so hard.
Yeah, it's really tough, and it's like, I mean, as long as you stick to, I mean, you can find places where it's really flat, but as long as you kind of challenge yourself and stick to the World Cup kind of, or the elite racing circuit courses have to be pretty steep and pretty tough. So if you can stick to training on some of the tougher stuff, then it's really good. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. That sounds like a busy season ahead. And then, do you get an off season at all between, I guess, around, October time before the snow falls? So when you can't quite get on the cross-country skis and the triathlon season's over, is that when you have a bit of chill time?
Yeah, I usually do sort of block in October, November to be flexible with what I'm doing. But I find it really hard, as everybody does, to kind of stop. And last year I did actually sign up for a race that I'd been wanting to do in October, which is Lidingö-Loppet. Do you know that?
I haven't heard of that, no.
It's like the world's largest cross-country running race in terms of... it's basically a Swedish race on one of the islands in Stockholm. And it's a 30k sort of terrain cross-country. It's not really brutal at all. It's just off-road. So
that sounds awesome.
It's billed as it's like it's got the numbers of kind of a marathon type of race. So they have, all these start pens, and it looks a little bit like Vasaloppet or something. And then you go off and run around this little island. So that was really nice. But when you start putting those little for fun kind of goals into the schedule, thinking, I'll get off the bike and I won't swim, I'll just do a bit of running, and then all of a sudden, you've got Achilles problems.
You think, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Oh, well, Kerry, thank you so much for joining us on the Cup of Triathlon podcast. It's been really, really good to talk to you. Best of luck for the World Championships in the Winter Triathlon. You're going to look to build on your 2011. You won the age group, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we'll see. I've got no real idea, to be honest. It just looks like a nice place to go for a weekend, and it'll be a really cool race and a cool thing to do. So it's hard to know. It's impossible to know how you're going to place in something like that, I think. So yeah, I'll just go all out.
Well, that was our interview of the week with Kerry McGawley, who is a triathlete. She does winter triathlon, she does summer triathlon, she speaks Swedish, and she is also a sports performance physiologist. So really fascinating stuff from her there. And we were talking a lot about the cross-country skiing. And one thing that we didn't mention were some of the triathletes who actually do a lot of cross-country skiing. One of them being Olympic champion Nicholas Spirig. I also heard recently in an interview that Daniela Riff is now going to take a little bit of time off after her recent win at Dubai 70.3. So she does a fair bit of cross-country skiing. And then I've seen as well that some of the elites out in Boulder during the winter, they get the skis on too. So it really is a great workout, essentially. It's a bit different, isn't it, to swimming and running and biking, but to get outside in amongst the nature, it's so peaceful. And yes, it is hard work, but it's well worth it. And in this country, you can do roller skiing, so just have a Google. I know I had a friend in London who once was roller skiing around Hyde Park. I've done it around Manchester as well. It's not as fun as being out on the snow, but it does get you used to it. And then there are some amazing events that once you've picked up the basics, you can go and do. And I really would recommend them. So that's probably about it for this week. Sorry it's a little bit shorter. Sorry Rob hasn't been here either. But it will all be back to normal next week. And in the meantime, have a great racing and training week. This is the Cup of Triathlon podcast. I'm Helen Murray, and we'll speak to you next week.